But the truth under pains and penalties of perjury.
Yes, sir.
Please be seated. Speak into the microphone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name for the jury.
Todd Smith.
And what town or city of residence do you reside in?
I live in Underhill, Vermont.
Okay. I'd like to take you back to October 8, 2016, late at night. Were you traveling on I-89 at that time?
Yes, ma'am. 89 southbound.
Okay. And where were you coming from?
Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility.
Okay. And where were you going to?
I was headed home.
Heading home. Okay. What kind of car were you driving?
Toyota Tacoma.
Okay. And it was you that was driving that
Yes,
vehicle?
ma'am.
And do you know what roadway were you on?
89 southbound.
And do you remember what time it was approximately?
It was right after shift change. I would assume somewhere between 11:30 and 12 o'clock.
Okay. And did something out of the ordinary happen on I-89 that night?
Yes, ma'am. Right before what I know is French Hill. I was in the left lane. If I remember correctly, it was dark. It was a rainy night, if I remember. I saw headlights a ways off, and it took me a few seconds, honestly, to figure out what was going on. I never expected to see headlights coming at me in that direction. By the time I figured out that there was actually headlights in a vehicle coming toward me, I got out of the left lane to the right lane. When I got into the right lane, the vehicle came at a high rate of speed. I even had to get into the emergency lane to get out of the vehicle's way.
As he passed you, did he stay in the passing lane as he passed you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Where was he?
If I'm headed southbound, I got into the right lane. I even had to move into the emergency lane, so he was in the right-hand lane
In
as
the
I was
passing
coming.
lane going north in the southbound passing lane?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he stayed there as he passed by you?
Yes, ma'am.
With the court's permission, could you please step down and come to the map and tell us where you first encountered the defendant and then where he passed you?
From my recollection, if this is French Hill, it must have been right before French Hill. It was right before the crest of French Hill. We're in this area here. I hit my brakes pretty quickly, and as fast as I could, pulled over at that point. I called off the mile marker to 911 when I told them. And after I talked to them, I just continued on afterward.
All right, thank you. Proceed. So you said you called 911. Did you have an opportunity to listen to your 911 call?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into evidence. State's Exhibit 9, which is the authentication from the 911 board, as well as the CD, State's Exhibit 10.
Any objection to 9 and 10? Any objection?
No, sir.
Okay, so 9 and 10 are admitted without objection.
Vermont 911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, hi, I'm traveling down Interstate 89, southbound, right before the Richmond-Bolton exit. A car just came on the interstate, the opposite direction of me. A pickup truck coming the opposite direction of traffic flow.
So you're traveling on the southbound lane,
I'm
like you said
traveling
before?
southbound, I'm stopped at mile marker 76.9, right before the Richmond-Bolton exit, and he just screamed like 100 miles an hour, past me the other direction.
Okay. Did you see what kind of vehicle by any chance?
Ma'am, it was full line, whatever it was. I could not, it was dark, the headlights, like I had to go on the road, yellow city.
What's your name?
My name is Todd Smith.
And your phone number is 3100644?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me connect this over to the state police. You're just going to hear me talk first for a moment.
Yep. Vermont State Police.
Hi, 911, State Office Agent 315. Are you aware of the wrong way driver, 89 southbound, 76.9?
I am aware. And what was your mile marker?
76.9.
All right, 79.6. 79.6. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, Todd, they have help on the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, Mr. Smith, based on the 911 call you made, placing yourself at 79.6, would the place where you passed him still be where you put the arrow on this map?
As far as I can tell by reading the map, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Any cross?
Just one question, Mr. Smith. So, do you think if you hadn't swerved off the road, do you think this truck would have hit you?
Absolutely.
No further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, you can step down. Thank you.
Well, I have a question, Mr. Smith. As I remember your testimony, you said that he stayed in the passing lane as he passed you, is that correct?
I was in
Going north?
I was in the left-hand lane, the passing lane, when I noticed. Moved into the right-hand lane. Vehicle moved into that right-hand lane as well. I had to get into the emergency lane for that vehicle to pass me. When he entered my right-hand lane if I was headed northbound.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
No, thank you.
You can step down. Thank you.
He's calling here. The state would call Colleen Flynn.
Careful, step up, please. Stand next to the chair. Raise your right hand. You solemnly affirm the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Please be seated, pull your chair forward, speak into the mic.
I've got some water, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Colleen Flynn,
And what town or city of residence do you reside in?
Burlington.
Okay. I'd like to take you back to October 8, 2016, late at night. Were you traveling on that date and time?
I was.
Okay. And where were you traveling from?
From Burlington to Richmond.
To Richmond. And which highway were you traveling?
89.
And you were going southbound?
Yes.
What kind of car were you driving?
I was driving a Nissan.
Okay. Do you know approximately what time you were driving?
Oh gosh. I think it's somewhere around midnight, but I actually don't remember.
Did something out of the ordinary happen while you were on the interstate?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to listen to your 911 call?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into evidence State's Exhibit 11, the authentication from the 911 board, as well as State's Exhibit 12, the CD of the 911 call.
Any objection? 11 and 12 are admitted without objection.
Come on, 911, where's your emergency?
I'm on the highway, I'm on 89, right next to going to the Richmond exit. There's a car going the opposite way.
On the right? Okay, so which way were you heading, north or south?
I'm from Burlington to Richmond.
Okay, southbound.
South. I just pulled over, there's a vehicle pulled over with the flashers on. I didn't know if I should get out and offer help.
Okay. I think they were calling this in as well. I'm hearing about a report on the other side of the room. Could you tell anything about the vehicle, color, or what kind of vehicle?
No, I couldn't see the car, and yeah, they were calling to let me know too.
Okay, and your name is?
My name is Colleen Flynn.
Colleen, and your phone number is 399-4447?
Yes, ma'am. I
Okay.
didn't touch the car, I just, oh my God.
Okay, I know.
They were going fast.
Yeah. All right, hang on 1 second so I can let them know, okay?
You got it.
Vermont State Police.
I know 18113 Williston. I have a report of a vehicle going the wrong way, northbound and the southbound lane right by the Richmond exit. Did not get a description of the vehicle.
Yep, I have a couple of other callers with that information. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, Colleen,
Yes, ma'am.
are you gonna be okay to drive?
Oh, yeah, I'm okay. Oh, my God, what is he?
I understand. Okay, Colleen, what is your date of birth?
3/11/61. David, I'll had someone pulled over right after I got off the highway from Bourgoin.
Yeah, that dispatcher there is advising the local police and the state police in the area, so hopefully somebody will grab him.
Oh, man, I hope they get him before they hurt somebody.
Yeah, I hear you. We get these a lot. I never understand it, but, yeah. Colleen, is Flynn Flynn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, if there's any need for follow-up, I have your information, so thank you very much for calling in and reporting that, okay?
You got it. Thanks.
All right, have a drive safe.
Okay, thanks.
All right, be right. Bye-bye.
So Ms. Flynn, could you please tell us where you first saw the headlights of someone coming the wrong way?
I had just crested French Hill,
Okay.
and it took me a minute because they were, if you're on a two-lane, they were on the right side. So it took a minute for me to realize that he's going the wrong way on 89.
Okay. Was he in the southbound passing lane?
Yes.
Okay. And did he stay in the southbound passing lane as he went by you?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, please, with the court's permission, come off here to the map. Can you tell us where, approximately on this map, this truck passed you by?
Gosh.
You say it was the
Okay, so I was going this way?
Yes.
Yep, so I just crested it, and I saw him down here.
Okay.
And as I got closer, I realized he's going down the wrong way.
Okay. So would it be right about here that he passes you, or down further?
Right about here.
Right about here.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, you can take your seat. When he passed you, did you do anything?
Yes, I laid on my horn because I thought, my first thought was it's the old person that's confused. So I beat my horn, but gosh, he was going so fast.
Okay. And you said that there was another truck that had already pulled over the side of the road?
When I got to the bottom of Richmond Hill, or French Hill, there was a white truck pulled over with their flashes on, and I just pulled in behind them to call 911.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Hold on. I don't know if Vince Council will have any.
No questions, thank you.
You're all set, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. The state would call Barron Far.
Careful of the cord. You're going to step up here and just stand by the chair. Raise your right hand. You solemnly affirm the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury.
Yes.
Please be seated. Okay, you're going to pull your chair forward, speak into the microphone. Okay? Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
Please state your name for the jury.
Barron Far.
And what town or city do you reside in, Ms. Far?
I live in Richmond, Vermont.
I'd like to take you back to October 8, 2016, late at night. Were you traveling on that date and time?
Yes.
And what roadway were you traveling?
Interstate 89.
And do you know approximately what time?
It was around midnight.
And which direction were you traveling in?
I was headed towards Richmond, so I was going southbound.
Where were you coming from?
I was coming from work. I worked at the Lighthouse in Colchester at the time.
Okay, and you were going to Richmond?
I was going home to Richmond.
What kind of car were you driving?
I had a white Chevy Suburban at the time. It was a 2000.
Okay, and did something out of the ordinary occur on 89 that night as you were driving southbound?
Yes, I passed the wrong way driver.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
But did you call 911?
I did. Mhm.
And have you listened to the 911 call?
I did, yes.
This time, Your Honor, the state would move into evidence State's Exhibit 13, which is the authentication from the 911 board, as well as State's Exhibit 14, which is the CD of the 911 call.
Any objection? 13 and 14 are admitted.
Vermont 911, where is your emergency?
There's a car the wrong way on the highway.
Okay, is the vehicle still driving or has it hit anything yet?
Oh, no, it hasn't hit anything yet. It's driving.
Okay, we already have it, the state police are aware, okay?
Okay, is the Liston area like French Hill?
Yep, it started off in the Richmond area, so is it coming up French Hill now?
Yes, it's probably getting to the flat, approaching
The rest area?
yes.
Okay, all right, thank you for calling.
You're welcome, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Ms. Farr, take us through what you observed that night on October 8, 2016, as you were traveling southbound on I-89.
So I was coming home, and right about when I passed right where I passed the rest area there, I saw the small Volkswagen, and one of the chefs where I worked has the same car and also lives in Richmond. So I happened to look down to see if it was him, and it was not him. There was, the car was fully occupied with young people. But so a couple of cars got, sorry.
Let's take this one step at a time, okay?
Oh.
So do you have any idea how fast that VW was going at the time you first saw it?
It was definitely going the speed limit, because I was going a little probably faster than the speed limit, because I was in the left lane and I passed it.
Okay.
So it was driving probably the appropriate speed, and I was going a little bit faster.
Okay.
Not like crazy, but just a tiny bit.
Okay. And so as you passed the VW Jetta, what is the next thing you remember?
So then I was going, and when I was past the turnaround, but before where the accident happened, I saw the lights coming. Like there was a strange light. You know, there shouldn't be a glow, but there was a glow of light.
Well, if I could please stop you, when you
Sure.
say the turnaround, what are you talking about?
There's a turnaround, a U-turn, where the police would sit and do radar, or a plow would turn around. So right about when I passed that is when I saw the glow of something which turned out to be the headlights of the car.
And were you still in the passing lane? Or
No, I was in the right-hand lane, because after the rest area, nobody was coming out of the rest area, so I went back into the right-hand lane
Okay,
to continue my drive home.
okay, and then what happened?
So I saw the lights, and then a car came, and so I didn't want to signal or do anything, because I figured that if someone was driving the wrong way, that could be dangerous. So I just pulled as far off to the road as I could into the breakdown lane, but continued going. I didn't stop, I continued driving, but in the breakdown lane, so that I could get home. So then I passed the car, and I waited to call 911 until after I passed the car, because I felt like I should be focused on driving with the wrong direction thing.
Do you remember it being a car, or do you remember?
I was in a Suburban, which was a truck body car, and it was definitely something of similar size, like a pickup truck of similar size, and I believe it had a cap on it.
And so as it eventually passed you, and did it pass you in the passing lane?
So I was if you're driving down the road, I was in the right-hand lane, and it passed, I was kind of in the right-hand lane and the breakdown lane, because I had scooted as far over as I could, and it was in the the lane that would be the passing lane, the left-hand lane.
So with the court's permission, if you could step down and let's look at the map. Just to get you situated here, this is going south. This is the southbound lane. So where on this map would the truck or car that you just described have passed you while it was in the passing lane going north, the southbound passing lane?
Do you want me?
Here.
Okay.
I'll give you a little sticky with your name on it.
Okay.
So I passed him right about there.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You can take your seat. When you were straddling the breakdown lane and the travel lane going south, how fast were you going at that point?
I definitely slowed down. So I would say I was probably going 45 or 50 because I was nervous and I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, so I pulled into the breakdown lane sort of hoping I would go straight, but anticipating that like I'd have to bail into the field or something. I didn't know, so I slowed way down.
All right. And do you have any idea how fast that truck or car that was passing you was going?
I would assume, it seemed to be traveling pretty fast. I would assume it was probably going in the 80 to 90 range.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Defense counsel.
No questions, thank you.
You're all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Step up, please. Stand next to the chair.
Stand next to it?
Yep.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please be seated. Pull your seat forward. Speak into the microphone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name.
Keith Porter,
And what town or city of residence do you reside in, Mr. Porter?
Montpelier,
Okay, and are you employed?
self-employed.
Okay, and what is it you do?
I make wood products. I have an e-commerce website and sell different things. I also do some carpentry work. Yeah.
I'd like to take you back to October 8, 2016, sometime late at night. Do you have that date in mind?
Yes.
Okay. Were you traveling on I-89 at some point that night?
Yes, with my wife and my 2 sons.
Okay. And
Yeah.
approximately what time were you traveling?
We were at a birthday party in Winooski, and I believe we left sometime around 11:30 at night.
All right. So who was driving the vehicle you were in?
My wife Alice was driving, and my oldest son was sitting in the passenger seat, and I was sitting in the back seat with my youngest son.
And were you traveling back to Montpelier, your home?
Yes,
So is it fair to assume you were traveling southbound?
southbound, yes.
Okay. Did something out of the ordinary happen on I-89 southbound that night?
Yes. Well, we were driving and noticed a car had pulled over on the right side of the road with its hazards on.
Okay.
And my wife started to move into the passing lane to give them space.
Okay. And what happened next?
When we got closer to the car that had pulled over, a wreckage appeared in the middle of the highway of a vehicle
and my wife swerved back into the traveling lane to avoid it, the main part of the wreckage.
Okay. And what else did you see when you arrived on the scene?
Well, there was the car pulled over with its hazards, and we went through remnants of car parts, could feel them under the car, and then we knew we had to pull over so my wife pulled over and beyond the car that had pulled over.
Okay. And then what did you do?
I got out of the car, and my wife immediately got on her phone and was calling 911, and I grabbed my phone out of the charger and reached in for it out of the driver window because I was out of the car, and I turned the light on the phone.
Why?
I knew that I had to warn people that there was wreckage of a vehicle in the middle of the highway, and you couldn't see it.
So this wreckage that you're talking
Yeah.
about, do you know what kind of vehicle it was?
I couldn't really tell going by that fast. Just knew that it was. Yeah, I couldn't tell what it was. I could tell it was heavily damaged.
And do you remember which lane of travel it was in?
It was more on the passing lane, I would say, but maybe partially on the traveling lane southbound.
And were you able to tell which direction it was pointed in?
Well, later, when I got closer to the site, I was. I stopped at the one car that had pulled over, and then and when I got closer to it, there were other cars continuing through the wreckage, maybe 2 cars in that time.
Okay.
Yeah, is that?
Did you ever approach the vehicle that was there that you said was damaged?
I did after I had gone beyond it and tried to stop as many cars from getting up to it.
So were you successful in stopping vehicles coming through the debris field there?
At some point, cars were pulling over before the wreckage of the car, and I remember turning on the hazards on one of the cars. The person had gotten out and had gone to help, and I remember putting on the hazard lights, and at some point I felt like there was enough cars pulled over before, and I could go back and get a better look at the wreckage of the vehicle in the highway.
So when you had pulled your car over,
Yeah.
were you north or south of the wrecked vehicle?
South.
South. Okay.
Yeah, and we were further south than the car that had originally pulled over. There was one other car pulled over.
So you went and attempted to stop cars from going through
Right.
the wreckage. What did you do next?
I came back. Now the highway was safer. It felt like there were cars pulling over before, and I knew it was safer to go out into the highway and to look at the wreckage and see if there was any. When I ran by the first time, I didn't see anyone there, and I went back just to kind of double check to make sure that there wasn't anybody at that site. And
So you were walking north, trying to stop traffic
Yep.
coming south?
Yep, it's north beyond the wreckage, and then at some point I came back to start going to the vehicles, or in that one first.
You had just mentioned a minute ago that there was a car that was stopped, that you put their hazard lights on, and you said they had tried to help. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I just remember it was one of the cars, and I noticed that they'd gotten out quickly and not put the hazard lights on, and I remember yelling to, I believe it was a gentleman, but I'm not 100% sure. It was very dark, and I just yelled, "Can I put your hazard lights on?" And then I might have continued on a little while after that, and then back again, like I previously mentioned.
Where was the gentleman heading?
I believe, I'd say on the other, towards the median, that direction.
Had you at that point seen what was going on in the median?
I knew that there was another vehicle involved, but I couldn't get a good look at it. It was over the embankment.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you talk to anybody else in the vehicles that had in fact pulled over?
One of the cars I pulled over, I believe it was early on because they had gone through the wreckage and they had slowed down quickly. I yelled, they might have yelled out the window, I'm a nurse practitioner, is anybody hurt? And I think I was running and continuing on, I yelled back, I believe so. I mean.
Did you later learn who that nurse practitioner was?
I did, yeah. After the second collision, I was giving my information to a police officer, and she was there too, and I recognized her name and knew her.
Do you remember what her name was?
Yeah, Sue Janes.
Okay. So you're coming back south, as I understand it, after stopping the traffic moving south. And what is the next thing you do?
I approach the vehicle in the road, and I'm coming from the side of the road where all the cars are pulling over, and as I approach the truck, there's a person. It almost felt like we were meeting at the same time there, but they were still. And I got maybe a little closer than we are right now and saw a gentleman standing there.
Okay, and before we get into that, at that point, did you know which direction that vehicle or truck was facing?
It looked like it was not perfectly facing north, but it was more so facing north, I'd say.
Right. And again, do you remember which lane it was in?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I would say most of it was in the passing lane.
The passing lane going north in the southbound lane?
So it would be the passing lane going southbound, yes.
Okay.
Passing lane going southbound, yeah.
All right. So you talk about meeting or encountering this male. Can you describe him in any way?
I guess the first thing I noticed is that he was standing close to the wreckage of the cab of the truck, and he had facial hair, and he spoke to me, I believe, before I said anything to him. He was maybe my height, a little taller maybe, and like I said, a little younger than I am.
Can you tell us approximately how much he weighed?
I would say, in the 180 to 200 range, something like that, maybe. Yeah.
Do you see him here in the courtroom?
I don't recognize, but it might have changed since then. But yeah.
I'd like to show you what's been marked into evidence as State's Exhibit 2.
Mm-hmm.
Would you take a look at that and tell us if you recognize the person in that?
Yep, I would say that was the man I was talking to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what did this man say to you?
He just says, I don't know what happened, I just lost control, in kind of that cadence.
Okay.
I think I was, yeah.
Okay. And did you respond to him in any way?
I know I said something back to him, but I'm not sure exactly what it was.
And did you have any indication that he had been injured or that he needed help? Or?
He was kind of slumped towards me a little bit, and I knew as soon as he said that he'd been in the accident.
How did you know that?
Well, I just assumed that what he was saying to me was that he was the cause of what happened.
And did you ask him if anybody else had been hurt in this crash?
I think that's what I responded back to him about, are there other people, or if someone else was hurt, something along that lines. I don't recall exactly what I said.
Okay. And so, at some point, did you leave this male and go somewhere else?
About the same time, in my memory, there's a police cruiser coming from the Williston direction, and I can see clearly now the car that's in the median, and the cruiser comes quickly up the highway and points at the car that's in the median. So right around the same time, I would say.
And did you see what the police officer that arrived on the scene did?
He got out of the cruiser, and I remember the trunk opening, and he grabbed a fire extinguisher and went straight down to the car that was starting to, become engulfed and on fire.
Okay. And so did you see where that male went, or if he had moved anywhere?
After we had that few second interaction, I didn't see where he went, no.
And so what did you do next?
I ran to the embankment above now where the police officer is, and tried to see what I could do to help.
Okay. Were you able to see what the police officer was doing?
He discharged the fire extinguisher onto the front of the car where the fire was.
Okay. Was he trying to do anything else with the car at that point?
After the fire extinguisher was empty, he started banging on the windows and trying to break the windows.
Was he able to put the fire out completely?
No.
Okay. Did you attempt to help put out this fire?
I was behind him, and the police officer was yelling, "Stand back." I'm assuming there might have been other people there, but I was so focused on him, and I was playing this, shadowing him, trying to see when there would be an opportunity for me to get in there and help. I had nothing besides my phone in my hands.
Do you know where the gentleman went that you had first seen run toward the median? Were you watching to see where he went?
No.
Were you watching to see where Sue James went?
I did not see any. I was so focused on the car and the police officer, but the other image I did see, again, right around that same time as the officers coming from Williston, is at least two individuals pulling what looked like the body of a female away from the car.
Okay. All right. So, were you able to get close to the car that was on fire?
I was behind the police officer when he was banging on the windows.
Okay. Was he saying anything as he was banging on the windows?
Yeah, he was.
What was he saying?
Get out of the car, get out of the car, repeating it.
Okay. So, at some point, did you leave the median and do something else?
At some point, I did. I kind of was I probably walked back up to the embankment, and I remember yelling to, I guess, in the direction of the line of cars, does anybody have another fire extinguisher? We need another fire extinguisher. Something like that.
Did you see the police cruiser that this officer had actually arrived in, the one that went down to the median?
I didn't notice it anymore. I noticed that it was dark again. I felt like it was illuminated by the lights at one point, and then now there weren't any more lights. And then around the same time, another cruiser is coming down the highway from Williston.
So while all this was going on, what were you thinking?
How horrible. I'm thinking I feel helpless, and I felt, I was traumatized. I was very confused when the second cruiser came, kind of slowed down and swerved around me. I remember feeling like, oh, I can get something, like another fire extinguisher, and he swerved around me and then just kept going, and I was baffled by that. I didn't know what was...
So you thought that another police officer had arrived on the scene?
It did, but instead of stopping, it just took off down the highway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, you didn't see where that first cruiser was?
No.
All right. So what is the next thing that you do then when you come back up onto the interstate?
At some point, the officers, the second cruiser has gone by, and the officer that's there on the scene, I'm a ways away from him now for some reason. He's on the Richmond side of the wreckage in the highway, and I'm on the Williston side, walking up the bank, but I might have been going back and forth. But I'm hearing him yell, everybody off the interstate, off the interstate.
Did you know why he was yelling that?
I guess in my mind I assumed that it was for emergency vehicles. And I also remember thinking, it's fine, no one's coming from Williston. I stopped the traffic. It's safe on the highway.
So what happened then?
At some point, I just knew there was nothing that I could do. The car was on fire, and there was a danger of it exploding. I remember stand back, it can blow. What is one of the things the officer said. And I'm kind of walking back up the embankment on the highway, echoing what the police officer on the other side of the wreckage is saying off the interstate. I remember yelling it to the cars. And I remember seeing one car break out of the line of cars and kind of go towards Richmond.
Okay, and how, as you're walking down the interstate, helping them yell to get off the interstate,
right.
How close are you to that, the wrecked truck that was there when you first got there?
I would say I was within 50 yards of the wreckage, maybe closer to 30.
And were you north of it or south of it?
I was north of it, yeah.
All right. So you're north of the truck that's there. And what's the next thing that happens?
I remember hearing, I'm facing the cars that are pulled over, and I remember hearing like a split second of an engine, extremely loud engine roar, I guess, and I just looked towards the wreckage of the truck and just saw this other vehicle. It hit it.
What kind of vehicle was it?
I knew it was, I could see it was a white SUV police vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so where were you when you saw that hit the truck?
Basically the middle of the highway, like literally probably feet from the median, from the lines, the middle of the highway.
So did you do anything to protect yourself or anything as you saw this happening?
Time kind of really slowed down, and I knew that I understood now what the police officer was concerned about, and I only had time to basically lay down on the highway, and I expected to not survive, and just thought this is how it's going to go. And I remember hoping it would be quick, and I laid down on the highway and kind of tried to dive towards the median and brace myself.
Okay. And so after the impact between that white cruiser and He impacted the truck that was sitting there? Is that what your testimony?
I just remember it going up. I saw it for a split second hit the wreckage and go up in the air.
What went up in the air?
The police cruiser that was coming at a high rate of speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know it was coming at a high rate of speed, why?
Because it was on top of me before I could react to it. It was, all I could do was lay down, like, or fall to the ground. I had no time.
Okay.
It was,
So, what happened next to you as you laid there thinking you were going to die?
I felt like a heat or warmth, and I believe something hit my feet and kind of spun me around, and I slid a little bit on the highway and realized at some point, I remember standing up and...
Did you get injured at all in what happened between the cruiser and the truck?
At the time, I didn't know if I was in shock or if I was really injured. I remember standing up and touching my different parts to see if I was still there. I didn't know what had hit me. I knew I'd been hit by something, but I didn't know the extent of it. And yeah.
At some point, did you learn what you were hit with?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what I was hit with. I just assume wreckage of the scene. I don't. Yeah.
So can you tell us, please, what injuries you actually received after this impact between the cruiser and the truck?
I had foot injuries, lacerations. I had a broken toe, and various cuts and scrapes and bruises. I didn't realize it until at that point, when I got up off the highway, I knew that I had to get back to my family because I didn't know, what was going on. I was confused and saw that it was a police car that was hitting us or hitting everyone. I assumed there were many people injured, but I had to get back to my family, so I started running back towards my wife and the boys in the car.
Were you concerned about your wife and your boys?
Absolutely, yeah. I was panicked.
Okay. So, did you actually reach your car and determine how they were?
I remember going through some fire, and then I got to the car where the two girls, the original car that I pulled over with the two young women in it. And when I got to there, I saw a group of people starting to kind of gather there, and there were people upset and they saw me running from the wreckage, and by then I guess I'd noticed that my foot was injured, and I could tell I was bleeding.
At any point, were you able to see whether any of the vehicles that had pulled over to the side of the road had been damaged?
I didn't take time to look, but I knew that it was complete chaos. I mean, I assumed that there was a lot of damaged vehicles, but I didn't really get a good look because I was so focused on getting back to the car. Yeah.
So, what did you do when you learned that your family was okay? What's the next thing you did?
I could see that the car was okay. When I got to the car with the girls, there were, I don't know, maybe 50 yards was Alice's car, and that they were all in it. And then someone said that, then I knew I was having a hard time walking or running, and I didn't actually make it to the car. Someone said that they'd go check on Allie and the boys, and I stayed at the car. And at first, I stayed at the car with the two girls.
And did you talk to anybody about what had happened?
I was in shock, and I was saying things to the people that were there, trying to piece together what had happened. So I was kind of just probably, wasn't making much sense, but I was trying to figure out what had happened, and
Okay.
yeah.
So did you leave the scene shortly after that?
At that point, at the car where people are starting to meet, it felt like then a lot of the emergency vehicles were starting to arrive then. and I stayed there. I knew my foot wasn't in great shape, and I stayed there, and and eventually an EMT came, and I stayed there, and a police officer came, took down a bunch of people's information, including myself, and more rescue vehicles were coming on the scene.
What was wrong with your foot?
I had just a puncture wound, and then broke a toe, and a bunch of kind of burn marks. And
From what, do you know?
the wreckage of the car. I'm assuming it was I don't know exactly what part, but something hit me when from the collision. I don't think it was the cruiser, because then I wouldn't have survived, but I think it was probably the wreckage of the vehicle, if I had to guess.
So previously you had said something about right before the impact, or at impact, you saw the cruiser airborne? Is that what, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
In my mind, I can hear the engine, the loud whack of metal hitting metal, and I see a car going up, in the air towards me. That's what all I could, and then from there I just remember diving, and I wasn't able to watch it as it came closer to me.
So did you ever see that male that you had talked to that said, "I just lost control"? Did you ever see him again?
I did not.
Did you ever learn while you were on the scene who was driving that cruiser?
No.
Okay.
Didn't know what happened. Yeah.
Did you go to the hospital?
We were up the line, facing Montpelier, where we live, and I was given the option to get in one of the ambulances or on scene and go to UVM, or just continue on and go to Central Vermont Medical Center after I got some attention at the scene. So that's what we did. My wife dropped me off at the emergency room.
So you told us that after what you experienced, you were in shock. Can you remember what the scene looked like after that second impact?
It was horrible. I felt like there were many things on fire. There were people screaming. I assumed that there were many people injured or killed. It was like a war zone. I mean, I'd say that, and I've actually, have gone to one. I'm not trying to say that lightly, but it was incredibly disturbing. And I felt like we're helping. Who's trying to hurt us? Who's coming? Yeah.
Thank you. Defense counsel may have a few questions.
Just briefly, Your Honor, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, when you first came upon the scene, your wife was driving, correct? And it was dark that evening?
It was a very dark night.
Okay. And there were no lights on in the wreckage that was in the middle of the road, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It was just kind of a dark hulk of metal in the middle of the highway.
I would describe it at that, yeah.
And then you did have this encounter with this individual. It was for 5 to 8 seconds, something like that?
I would say it was quick, yeah.
Well, haven't you said previously it was 5 to 8 seconds?
If I did say that, I think that's accurate.
Okay, that sounds about right.
It does.
And you were 20 feet away when you were talking to him?
Yeah, I'd say maybe a little closer. I might have said something different, but I was able enough to hear him in a talking voice.
Okay. Do you remember previously saying it was about 20 feet?
I don't remember that, no.
And this person, he was distraught, correct?
I guess he was upset looking like I guess he looked upset. I'd say that best way to describe it.
Okay, do you remember saying he was distraught?
I could have said distraught.
Okay, and shaken?
Shaking, like, was he shaking or he was shaken?
He was distraught and shaken. Do you remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that, but I guess that would partially describe what I was seeing.
So you're not quarreling with that?
No, I guess not, yeah.
And that in your gut, he was not with it.
I remember thinking to myself that this wasn't making sense. I don't know if I said with it or I was trying to add up things that were happening, and I would say that
Okay.
I don't remember saying that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you remember saying he was distraught and shaken, and my gut feeling was that he was not with it?
I don't remember saying that exactly.
Please just have a moment. Well, let me ask you this. Do you
Sure.
remember being interviewed by the police back on October 10th, 2016?
I did. They came to my home.
And do you think it would refresh your recollection about what you said on October 10th, 2016, if you had a chance to look at the transcript of that interview?
Sure. I could look at it, yeah.
Just a moment. Show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit A for identification, and just take a quick look at that and tell me if you can identify what that is.
Identify what this...
What the document appears to be.
My statements, and it looks like the trooper... Yes, the troopers that came to my house, and my wife was there too, yes. Okay.
And so if you would just look at page 21, between lines 15 and 18, read that to yourself,
Okay.
and then I'll have a question for you.
Okay. You said 15 and 18?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, I see it, yeah.
Does that refresh your recollection about whether or not you told the troopers back then he was distraught and shaken, and my gut feeling was that he was not with it?
I guess I'd agree to that, yes.
Okay, that's what you said to them back then?
Yeah, I did say that, yeah.
And you agree with that now?
Yeah, I guess I would describe it differently, I guess, being, it was so close to after the accident, I was in shock still. But I would say that I agree with that, but yeah.
I don't have anything else, Judge. Thank you very much.
Hold on, Mr. Porter.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Right.
You reviewed the question and answer that Mr. Cadams asked you to review, correct?
Yes.
But it wasn't your full answer, was it?
Well, I guess, there's different ways to describe distraught,
Okay.
and I would say, okay.
Let me, if I could approach you
Sure.
and let you read lines 15 to 18.
Okay.
For yourself, okay?
Okay.
To refresh your recollection
Mhm.
about what you said,
Okay.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good?
Yeah.
So after you said, I didn't think he was with it, you went on to talk more, didn't you?
I believe so, yeah.
What did you say?
I remember feeling like things weren't making sense, like that I felt that the truck was pointing the wrong way and that there was something else going on here. I was just trying to get bits and pieces in my mind, was trying to figure out what was happening or had happened.
Did the statement that this male made to you about, "I just lost control," did that factor into what you were trying to figure out?
Yes, yeah. I was trying to figure out, like, again, I remember him saying that was making me assume that his actions caused this. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
That's all I have.
No further questions, James, thank you.
You're all set, thank you.
Thank you.
The state would call Joseph Lecter Mindell.
Careful, step up, please. Stand next to the chair, please. Raise your right hand. You solemnly affirm the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury.
Thank you.
Please be seated. Pull the seat forward. Speak into the microphone.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Please state your name for the record.
Joseph Leuchter Mindell.
And would you please spell your last name?
Yep. Leuchther-Mindel.
And what town or city of residence do you live in?
Underhill,
Okay, and your employment, please?
the UVM Medical Center.
Okay, as what?
I'm a critical care nurse.
Okay, and how long have you been a nurse at the University of Vermont Medical Center?
It'll be 7 years this summer.
All right, and have you always been in critical care?
Yeah.
So I'd like to take you back to October 8, 2016, late at night. Were you traveling around that time, on that date and time?
Yes, I was driving home from work.
Okay, you were driving home from the hospital?
Yeah.
And which direction were you heading in?
I was going south on the interstate.
Okay. And approximately what time were you traveling?
Yeah, well, let's see, it get done at probably 11:30, so it was probably 11:45 or so.
Okay. And so when you were traveling southbound on I-89, did something out of the ordinary happen on the interstate that night?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us, when did you first notice something out of the ordinary?
Well, I saw cars, as I was passing by the rest area, I noticed that cars were slowing down kind of up ahead as far as I could see.
Okay. And then what?
And then I drove up to the scene and saw that it was an accident.
Okay.
And
Tell
so,
us what you saw. when you
sure.
got there.
So there was kind of debris all over the road, and I saw a truck which was heavily damaged. There was someone who was sort of directing traffic, and I asked if there were injuries, and he didn't seem to know, so I drove past the scene for 100 yards or so, and then parked and got out to help.
Okay. And so you got out of your car, and where did you go?
So I walked up to the truck. The door was open at this point. I was with someone else, I'm not sure who.
Male or female?
I believe it was a female,
Okay.
I think.
At this point, were there any law enforcement officers on scene?
No.
Okay. So, okay, go ahead, continue.
So I figured there must have been somebody in the truck, so I looked in the truck for anyone that was hurt, and there was no one in it. I asked somebody who was standing nearby where the driver went, and he pointed south farther down the highway and said he'd walk that way. And it was at that point that I noticed the other car in the median that was on fire.
Okay. And what did you do?
So I started walking through the grass down the hill toward the car. There were, I think, one or two other people that were with me when we headed down there.
Do you know who those people were?
I believe it's One of them was Sue, the nurse practitioner, who was with me, and then her partner.
So you started walking down the median?
Down toward the car. I think as we were walking down was when the first police officer arrived, because he sort of met us down by the car. So we walked up toward the car, and I saw there was somebody laying face down in the grass, not far from the car.
And what did you do?
So she was pretty close to the car, so we wanted to get her away. So we dragged her 20 feet or so from the car.
At that point, did you know whether she was alive or not?
I didn't know yet. We just wanted to, in case the fire got bigger or the car exploded, we wanted to get her away from the car. So we got her away from the car, turned her over, and she was not breathing and had no pulse. So we started to do CPR.
Did you personally do CPR?
Yes.
And while you were doing CPR on this female, was the police officer doing anything?
So Sue and I started doing CPR. The police officer went up to the car and tried to get the rear door open. It was locked, and it obviously burned his hand. And then he pounded on the window and was yelling, get out of the car, get out of the car.
And then what did you do next?
So somewhere in there, I went back up to my car to get a CPR mask and some gloves.
Are you still going to be working on this female?
Yes. So I ran up to my car, and went back down, and sort of my timeline gets a little skewed here, but it was sometime around then, I think, that I saw the police car driving south on the highway going, was it south or was it north? No, I can't even remember. I think it was, well, anyway, driving into the scene going extremely fast.
So are you saying that this cruiser was heading towards the scene of the
I believe it was headed north in the southbound lane. Lights on, going extremely fast. And
Did you see what it did?
so the scene, the remaining car up on the road was sort of behind some trees, but there was a very loud impact and debris flying everywhere, and people up on the highway screaming.
And were you up on the interstate at this point? Or were you still on the
I don't know. I don't know.
What were you feeling at this point?
At this point, I think I must have been, we must have been doing CPR at this point, because we continued CPR. I mean, I didn't know what was happening up there, but I didn't think it was probably good, but.
But you were focused on
Yeah.
giving CPR to the female veteran?
Yes.
Okay. Were you successful in resuscitating her?
No, we did, I don't know how many rounds of CPR we did. Eventually, the fire department showed up and brought down an AED. And
What's an AED?
Oh, sorry, it's a defibrillator. And the fireman said, do one more round of CPR, and if the defibrillator advises no shock at that point, to stop.
What is no shock?
It means that there's not a rhythm that the machine analyzes that it thinks it can shock. So we did one more round, and it said no shock advised, so we stopped.
Okay. So do you then go back up onto the interstate?
Yep. So I walked back up to the interstate because I figure there must be more casualties up on the road.
And what did you see when you got up on the interstate?
So I get up on the interstate and there are cars. There's a car overturned. There are cars off the road. The police cruiser is kind of sideways in the road and it's on fire.
Did you notice anything else that was going on while you were up there on the scene?
No, just people standing around. I mean, yeah.
Did you hear anything?
Oh, I heard the rounds of ammunition in the police car exploding.
What did that sound like?
It sounded like gunfire.
Like gunfire?
Yep.
Were you able to observe how people reacted to that ammunition going off?
There was a group of people that was just kind of standing not far from the police car. They were just, I don't know what they were doing. They were just standing there, so I kind of herded them back behind a car until the fire department could come and put the fire out.
Okay. Did you ever see, while you were up there on the interstate, did you ever see anybody on the ground, a male on the ground?
Yeah, so after the fire of the police car was out, I went up to make sure there was no one in it. And there was someone on the ground not far from there with a couple of people around him. I think it was, so I went up there to make sure that he was okay. I think it was about this point that the ambulances started to show up.
Was anybody with this person that was on the ground?
There were a couple people there. I think one of them said that he was a doctor.
All right. Did you get involved in caring for this person that was on the ground?
Yeah, so I helped backboard him.
What does that mean?
So put him on a spinal immobilization board and put a C-collar around his neck. And then helped put him on the stretcher so I could bring him to the ambulance.
At that point, were you aware whether he had any injuries?
He didn't have any noticeable injuries. He wasn't making a lot of sense what he was saying, but he seemed to be conscious.
Okay. So you say, was he talking or yelling?
He wasn't talking. He may have yelled. That was all that I heard.
Do you know what he was yelling?
It wasn't, I don't even know. I don't even think it was words. I think it was just yelling.
And so he was taken away by ambulance at that point?
Yep.
And what did you do next, if anything?
So at this point, I wasn't 100% sure that there weren't more people unaccounted for. So we started checking cars and checking the sides of the road.
To your knowledge, were there other people that had gotten injured in this?
There were some people with minor injuries from cars that had been hit, that stopped after the initial impact. Nobody seemed to have any major injuries.
Did you see any damage to the cars that were parked on the side of the road?
There was one car that was flipped on its side. There was one car that was sort of sideways, half off the road. I don't remember specifically damage.
Did you do anything else after you walked through to see if there was anybody else injured?
At one point I went back down to the car in the median just to make sure there weren't more people around.
Okay. All right. And then, did you leave at that
And
point?
then, after that I went back up to the road and there didn't seem to be much else that I could do, so I got in my car and drove away.
Did your car sustain any damage?
It didn't, no.
Where were you parked in relation to the truck that was in the road?
I was parked maybe 50 or 100 yards farther south on the right side of the road in the shoulder.
To get to that point with your car, did you have to drive through anything?
There was some debris that I had to drive through. You mean initially or when I was leaving?
Initially.
Yeah, there was debris that I had to drive through.
Thank you, that's all the questions I have. Defense manager.
Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, you're all set.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
This opportunity to stand up.
Okay. So we're going to take our afternoon recess now before we start the next witness. So again, same caution. It'll be about a 15-minute break, but please avoid any discussion about the case with your fellow jurors. Just enjoy the break, okay? Thank you.
Rise, please.